Welcome to the third in the series of the Reference Desk, and it's the weekend of February 26, 27 of 2022. And today we're looking at genealogy. The significance of this topic for myself is from some reflections of how the practice of genealogy has changed over the last 2 decades and more. In the pre-digital age, a genealogical table was a chart depicting family lines of descent that commenced whenever that family record emerged from obscurity, and it ends at the date that the chart is published. And so it's a frozen record in a sense. And the access to records that verify the data in that chart are very hard to gain access to. The data would be in government records or official records, and there was always a transaction cost if you got a certificate for a birth or a marriage or a death or a citizenship. And so it was really an elite practice and an expensive practice to put together genealogical charts. And any errors that were in that chart, they stayed there and they were reproduced by others who used that chart. So it was a static record with all its strengths and weaknesses. And that was in the pre-digital age. Now, in the digital age, that practice has been transformed. A genealogical table has become an organic information site. It expands and extends through collaborative effort. It can link to the official sources for verification and authentication of the data. And access to records has improved so that it's easier to get access to those government records and other official records, sometimes for free, other times behind a paywall that can be reasonable in cost. But also the use of common platforms such as GEDCOM have allowed for the transfer of this data between practitioners who want to share their information. And that's whether it's transferring it to other websites or for individual use. Now, these digital platforms no longer contain just the basic information of when somebody was born and when they got married and who their offspring were, etc. But it can link to tables and images of texts that are important, grave sites, and other images. So it's really flowered out into this tremendous resource about individuals. Now, in this new digital age, factual errors are more easily found, either through comparison with other sites that have this information, or through that easy access to the official information, and also through crowdsourcing, which easily allows information that to be discovered if it's correct or not. So this digital platform that has emerged has allowed for biographers and historians who are working on Bahai individuals or communities to easily expand out their knowledge of these subjects that they're researching. Bahai archives generally hold Bahai-related materials. It's often records of meetings and events, and they contain less personal information about individuals, certainly about their origins before they'd become Baha'is, and also about their life outside of their specifically Baha'i activities, so their business life or other cultural life, their family life. And this has been referred to as biographical zoning because we don't have access to the other records. And we can think of many prominent Baha'is about whom we know very little other than their Baha'i activities. So these types of activities within the genealogical practice are helping us to expand our knowledge of that. Now, today we're hearing from Vicki Majewski because Vicki has become an expert in some of these innovations. Her platform is Wikitree. She actively works not only on her own family, but also has a Bahai Project. And over the last couple of years, she's been expanding our understanding of the origins of well-known Baha'is in diverse parts of the world. And so, for example, Vicki has been able to help with information about Claire and Hyde Dunn, in my own instance of being a historian of that couple, but with Vicki's expertise, finding some very precise details of their early life. So thank you, Vicki, for that. So with that bit of an introduction, I'll allow Vicki to introduce herself and her background and her interests. So Vicki, who's currently under cyclone watch in Darwin, but she's able to come online and ignore the weather that's occurring outside. So welcome, Vicki, and over to you for your presentation.
All right, thank you very much. And let me just share my screen with you all. So that's me. Hi, my name is Vicki Majewski, and I'm an amateur genealogical researcher and family historian living in Australia's Northern Territory. I'm going to start off with a little bit of background into
Vicki, if you shared your screen, you haven't.
Oh dear, what have I done? Let me just see. Share. Yes. Share. Am I sharing it now?
Yes.
Does everybody see that? Okay. Okay. So as I said, that's me. That's my Wikitree profile, or at least the public view of it. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of background into how I got doing this in the first place, and also then go into an outline of the Bahai Project on Wikitree. And lastly, I'll go over some of the resources that we use and places where we could probably use a little bit of help. So before I start, I just wanted to say that, well, I said I did this and I did that. I'm certainly not the only one doing Bahai-related genealogy, and not the first, because there are so many folks, such as the group, for example, on Find a Grave, who've been working for many years to chronicle the resting places of some of the early Bahais, and also the descendants of some of the earlier Bahais, I should say, who have written biographies about their ancestors and have done genealogical research to find out more about them. So, and there's also folks such as David, such as Stephen, Jonah, others who are putting together databases and resources that make this kind of work at least a lot easier. And so I send my sincere thanks to all of you for that. So let me get into my background. And like I said, this is me. I started doing genealogy in about 2015 when I discovered a wonderful website called Family Search. And for those who aren't familiar, Family Search is a free-to-use, not-for-profit website run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And while I'd always been interested in my family roots, being a stay-at-home mother of very young children at the time, I didn't have the resources or the time to go out and do a lot of the legwork that's usually involved with looking for records in person. So this opened up a whole new world for me, and let's just say I was hooked. So I signed up for an account and began working on my own family, and I made a lot of good discoveries and found a lot of distant cousins, and that was great. But I quickly became uncomfortable in traditional genealogy spaces. I found that many users tended to only be interested in growing their own family tree and were often resentful of those who hadn't done all the work that they had done, that we were just getting it for free, whereas they had done a lot of their own work. And I sort of didn't want to be like that. I felt, and I still feel, that family history should be accessible to everyone and that we should all help one another as we can. After all, we're one human family. The earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. And so I started looking for a platform where I could share my work, and that led me to Wikitree. And a little bit of background on Wikitree. Wikitree was founded by Chris Whitten, who I believe lives in the Northeast of the US. And much in the same way that Wikipedia functions as an online encyclopedia, which is free to use and crowdsourced and collaborative, Wikitree was built to be the same thing for genealogy. And here's their about page. And as their mission statement says, our mission is to grow an accurate single family tree that connects us all and is freely accessible to everyone forever. And that's quite different to other family tree websites where each user has their own separate tree and they kind of work separately with a little bit of collaboration if they want to. here they kind of force you to collaborate on, it's all one tree and everyone works together on one profile per person. So I was impressed by that, and I was impressed by a couple of other things. And they have an honor code which they make everyone sign before they you can work on family profiles outside of your own line. And this is their honor code. There's 9 points in it. The big one is we collaborate, and also we care about accuracy, but we also assume that mistakes are unintentional, and we shouldn't be afraid to make them, but we should also assume that others are just, they're just unintentionally making mistakes. They're not going out to sabotage your tree. I love that part. We know misunderstandings are inevitable. We try to minimize them by being courteous to everyone. We respect privacy. Privacy is a big thing. You can put living people on Wikitree, but you are the only one who gets to see them. You shouldn't put any information about living people in any public place. So that was great. I love the privacy aspect of it. We respect copyrights. That's also a big deal. We give credit, also a big deal. Although most genealogical information, the information itself is not copyrighted, but if someone else has done a whole lot of research, then they deserve credit for what they've done. And of course, we cite sources. Without sources, we can't objectively resolve conflicting information. And we are united in a mission to increase the world's common storage of knowledge. This opens so much up to those who would not be able to do traditional genealogy. So I love this. This is great. And the other thing I loved is that they not only allow but encourage people to work beyond their direct family lines. As long as the profile doesn't already exist, you can add a profile for any non-living person whose life you want to honor. So they also have a lot of running projects. For example, people who want to do Irish research, English research, studies of a particular place, a particular surname. Long story short, I love the concept of collaborative genealogy and decided to work on Wikitree. So I worked on adding my own family line for a couple of years. And then I want to say in about 2017, my father, who was visiting Australia at the time, told me about some research that he and other members of his community were doing on an early Bahai pioneer who had passed away in their community, and his name was Matthew Kassab. There are a few good write-ups about him. As some of you may know, there's an obituary of him in Bahai World Volume 9, also in Bahai News number 162, but I believe they were looking for things like medical records, a death certificate, things that might tell them more about his last days in Brownsville. I thought, well, maybe I could help them out by looking for some genealogical related sources and see what I could find. And so this was the result. I ended up building him a profile on Wikitree, and you can see here. It's gone through a few revisions with I must say, with the generous help of some of the other community members, particularly his biographer, Anne Sajapur, as well as his grandnephew, Oscar Arias, whom we found by doing genealogical research. And as we looked into his family line, we discovered some quite interesting things about his background. His father, for example, was quite an amazing person with a really amazing story to tell. He was an architect in Hungary, and then when he went to America, he became an inventor, and he toured the country with one of his stereoscope inventions. It was quite interesting to read about him too. And there were also people in his mother's family and his mother's line of that they were, I'm trying to think, they were let me see. But they were Hungarian nobility they were given a Hungarian nobility title for, and there were quite interesting stories on that side. And so I added all of those profiles too. And then while I was working on that, I thought to myself that if I could do this kind of research on him, what other stories might be out there about other early Baha'is, and not just the famous ones, but any of them. Even and especially the Baha'is in my own area of the world. How many of us knew where our community had come from? Certainly it didn't spring up out of nowhere. So, and because all Wikitree profiles are, I should say all open Wikitree profiles are publicly indexed, I thought it would be a great information to, it would be a great way to get information out about the Baha'i faith, because anyone who searches for these people will come across these profiles and see Baha'i that they can just click through and see what it's all about. So that brings me to Wikitree's Bahai Project. And this is our main page. This page was created by Don Osborne, who, again, I thank so much for doing this. He is a fellow wiki genealogist, which is a membership designation, and one of about a handful of other Baha'is working on Wikitree that I've discovered. We've got our goals here. We've got some of our methods and some examples as well, and our list of our members. Not too many of us so far, but yeah, in a nutshell, we exist to create, manage, and improve Bahai profiles on the Wikitree website, including those of the central figures, which we discovered had been added by non-Bahai members. We also had long-term goals of working with those with expertise in particularly Persian and Arabic script, as well as surname conventions pre-1920 and post-1920. So just quickly, the Bahai Faith Project is under the umbrella of the Wikitree Religion Project, which also has projects for other religious sects and religions, such as the Jewish Project, the Southern Baptist Project, Quakers, LDS, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. Our project itself is fairly new. We work on it, it's fairly casual. We work on it as we have time to do so. And we update each other periodically. Some of us add profiles for people we know personally. Some of us add profiles for people in various records that we come across. And some of us are more interested in chronicling the genealogies of the central figures. And let me just go to our, just give me just 2 seconds here. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so here is our Bahai Faith category. And every Bahai profile that we add has been, when we put the tags on it, it goes into a category or a set of subcategories for the Bahais on Wikitree. And these categories have been in existence for a number of years, and they were actually created by someone else who is no longer on Wikitree that we know of. They're not set in stone. I want to reiterate that. They will probably be added to and reworked over time as we further establish ourselves. But so far, we've got categories for people who've lived in the 20th and 21st centuries. We've got Hands of the Cause, Knights of Baha'u'llah, converts, so many converts, got the NSA of the US. So let me just see here. Oops, no, let me just, okay, so here's an example of an outline of a Bahai profile, and I've done that on Ozzy Whitehead. I love him so much. I never met him, but I wish I had. And anyway, this is just one example of a Bahai profile on Wikitree that I've built. Wikitree profiles have two required sections. Biography, here's the biography, and sources. Sometimes there'll be additional sections for research notes. And well, this one doesn't have one, but there will also be acknowledgements at the end. The biography is genealogy focused. Minimal info should be birth, death, marriage, parents, spouses, and children, if there are any. If the person was unmarried, if there was no children, if they were adopted, etc., then that should be listed as well. If the person is deemed notable by Wikitree, and also I believe they go by Wikipedia standards, then there's a whole set of extra requirements that need to be put in too. Basically, there should be a brief summary of their life and accomplishments as best as you can. Apart from the fact that no living people should be mentioned by name in the biography, there are no hard and fast standards that I know of for writing the biography itself. One common method some of us use is to go through each chronicled appearance in the census records and lay out where they were living, how old they were, who their parents were, who was listed in that record. This can also be a way of differentiating it from, say, a Wikipedia profile or a Bahaipedia profile. Keep in mind that everything is collaborative and nothing is set in stone. Everything can be changed as we come up with new information. Then, as far as sources go, sources, Wikitree's definition of sources is just an identification of where the information comes from. For example, birth records, death records, census records, burial records, interviews, personal knowledge of that person if you knew them. They can be listed bibliography style under the sources heading, or they can be put as inline references, and I'll just show you the view, the text view, where I have actually put them as inline references here. And there are different types of sources. There are primary sources, there are secondary sources, there are formal sources, informal, etc. Well-structured primary sources are preferred, but there is a lot of flexibility based on, because most people on Wikitree are not professional writers or website builders. So there is a lot of flexibility on style. The Bahai Project has a list of suggested sources, and I'll share more on that later. Let me go down to research notes. I usually use this space to put sometimes unverified information, sometimes speculation, or sometimes neat little facts that don't fit anywhere else in the main biography. And then there's an acknowledgements section, which this one doesn't have, but it would go down below the sources section. And it would say, many thanks to so-and-so for their help. If I create a profile with using lots of information from someone else's family tree, or if a non-Wikitree member might send me information, then I'll acknowledge them in the acknowledgements section. And finally, there is a photograph. I'll add a photograph if I can find one that's copyright free, or if I can get permission to do so. But since Wikitree is very strict about copyrighted materials, so many of our profiles don't have photographs. And there is one notable exception to this for us, and that is, of course, our profile for Baha'u'llah. And I've actually put on the top, now this is a little bit different from sites such as Wikipedia. The policy is a little bit different in the sense that as the profile managers, we have a little bit more control over what can go in and what can be posted, particularly when it comes to photographs. So I've put a little note at the top about attaching images just in case anyone is tempted to do so. And we've of course put the entrance to the shrine as they've done on Bahaipedia. So with very limited exceptions, Wikitree profiles are for deceased people only. Living people can be added, but will not show up anywhere on the public site. So we don't focus our research on living people, and we also don't put information on living people in the profile unless they have given us permission to do so. So let me just switch around. So these are, okay, after creating a profile, the next step is to try to connect that person to the main tree. This usually means identifying an ancestor who already has a Wikitree profile and creating more profiles in that line to connect the person to that generation. So for example, adding their parents, their grandparents. If I find it like a third great grandfather or something, then I'll add the parents, the grandparents, the great grandparents, the second great grandparents, and then connect them that way. If I can't find an ancestor, I'll look for siblings or aunts and uncles or in-laws. And I've put up Dr. Daniel Jordan's family tree, which as an example of this. With his family tree, the closest connection I could find was through the wife of one of his uncles. So what I did, here he is here. Here's his father and and I put his grandparents, and then through them, I was able to then go down to his uncle, and then the aunt, and then her family. And so creating connections to the main tree is a very, very important part of Wikitree's mission of connecting the entire human family as best as possible together. Plus, it also increases visibility of the profile itself and opens a pathway of collaborating with other family members, such as distant cousins who may not have known about their relatives' Baha'i activities. And I've come across many people like that. So let's just go to the next one. There's more than one type of profile in Wikitree. Those are person profiles so far we've discussed. Now we have free space profiles. They function as supplemental family history pages, and the Bahai Faith Project has, as far as I can tell, 5 free space profiles, including this one. Some early Baha'is of the West. We've also got recollection sketches of some early Australian Baha'is. These are both dedicated to 2 books chronicling the lives of early Baha'is. The people in these books have been listed, and I've put some information about who's written them and a citation example to put on the profiles that are created. And then, of course, I've listed all the people in the book. And if they already have profiles, then I will link to them here. And then it links back and forth to this page. And there is a template to these type of profiles for books. So I've also put where you can get the book too. The next type of profile we have, hang on, I think I've closed it, but anyway, I did another one for the film exemplar where I went through and listed every person that they talked about that I could find. I put timestamps on them. And again, if there was a Wikitree profile listed, then I listed that. Okay, so I've come to the Bahai Project to-do list. We have our to-do list here. Here I've put lists of profiles we've identified that need improvement, as well as individuals whom we think ought to be on Wikitree. And on each entry, I've made some notes about what type of information is needed and what type of information is we already have. So these are the ones that need improvement. These are the profiles that already exist that need improvement. I've linked the Bahaipedia page if they have one. I've linked the Bahai World if obituaries if they've got one too. If there's anything else, such as, let's say, a census record, this census record will lead to another family search profile, which is which I'll talk about in a minute. And those are these folks are the ones that already have a profile, and then these folks need a profile, and so that's these folks. The list is quite long, and I've actually had to move some of them to a separate text document, which I'm happy to share if anybody wants to see it. Some of these profiles, sorry, going back to the top, some of these profiles are marked private, and some of them have minimal biographical information. Some of them have no mention of their involvement with the Bahai faith. So anyone wishing to help with the Bahai Project can go in. This is a public page. Anyone wishing to help can go in and look at these and see what more you can find, or if you want to create one or add more yourself. Just quickly, I have some supplementary things, and I'll share that in just a moment, because I have to undo this one here. So, just pull it up. Then I will share this with you. This is my text document. I've been working on adding people I'm working on a lot of things, but one of my many projects is adding people from the in memoriam sections of Bahai World. And I had to move them all to a text document because the list got really long. Many of these people aren't very well known. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them were just your average community members. Some of them appear to have family who didn't even know they were Baha'is. There are a lot of great stories here. If anyone wants a copy of this, I'm happy to share. And finally, I wanted to mention that I do keep text documents of all of the profiles that I create. I just go through and copy the code, put it in a text document. That's because even though they say it'll be there forever, we'll keep it up forever, this is just in case. Back everything up in triplicate, as the saying goes. So that's kind of what I've done. Let me go back to my browser. There we go. Okay. So let me go into the resources. Oh, where'd it go? Resources that we use. And here's the list of resources we use, with many thanks to Stephen Collins for building this page for us. Thank you very much. As you can see, I'll just go through the contents. There's a list of sources. There's a list of biographies, country-specific sources, newspapers, lots and lots of books, all in English. I think it's all in English, but hopefully that will change in the future as more people contribute and get on board. So when building a Wikitree profile, I usually try to create a tree either on I usually try to create their profile either on Family Search or a tree on ancestry.com first. And sometimes I'll get lucky and someone else has already done it, and all I have to do is just make note of the information. That would be wonderful. Other times I have to build it from scratch, and I'll just show you one of the recent ones I've had to build from scratch. So this is Mr. Philip Hinton, who passed away last year. I'm currently building his tree using English, Australian, and even some South African records. I've already identified one great-great-grandparent on Wikitree with a Wikitree profile. That's not yet confirmed. But non-American Baha'is are even further unrepresented on Wikitree. So I do like to add these folks, and also people that I've known personally, which as a youngish person, I'm only in my early 40s. So as a youngish person, I haven't met too many, but I'd like to. And when that happens, I like to add the folks that I did know personally. Obviously not putting anything that their family doesn't want or anything like that. But yeah, so let me just stop sharing for a second. And here, let me go through some of the ways in which we could use help from the wider community. Number one is Persian records, Persian Arabic script, and especially those who wish to work on the ancestry of the central figures. Translation of documents and records that are not in English. There are already many people who could do that, but it would be nice to have some in our project too. Insight to any cultural or historical norms that we may have missed and which might be relevant to someone's family tree. More people who are interested in doing collaborative genealogy outside of their own family lines. Collaborative genealogy is not for everyone, but for those who might be interested in doing that, would be great to have them aboard. And more people who wish to record their own stories or the stories of their communities. People in the future will want to know more about us, more about you and the people that you knew. We are the early Baha'is, especially the average members just doing their thing, the ones that don't get a write-up in Baha'i world, or wouldn't have if they were still doing those. People in the future may want to know if they were related to these folks. I know I would. So that's pretty much what I do and what the Bahai Project is all about. And a great big thanks to all of those who have been involved with it, to Stephen and to Dawn, and to especially to David and Jonah and my parents who have sent me things and paid for things. That's fantastic. I just want to give credit where credit is due. So thanks very much. And I'll turn it over to questions.
Well, thanks very much, Vicki. That's a wonderful overview of your work and of the technologies that you're using. So I think it's been very inspiring, and I'm sure there are some questions to come from the people who Stephen, I don't know if you're starting with a question or.
I will jump in with a question. So I was wondering, you mentioned Family Search as one of the places that you're getting access to the things like the censuses. One of the things I've struggled with is where else I can get them. And the other one is I wanted to mention, and I assume lots of people involved in this know, the 1950 census is about to become public. But I wondered if where else, if you have other genealogical sources, and that work on that, you know, here are the sources, it needs to grow. That was just a basic first attempt to try to create some kind of listing of materials.
Yes, absolutely. And like I've said, and as you know as well, everything can change as it grows, and of course it'll be edited and re-edited as needed. So what you see now is certainly not set in stone. As far as other sources go, I do have them. These are just the main ones that I use for the American records, that definitely Family Search, Ancestry, the newspaper sites. There's a lot out there. The Australian records, they tend to go state by state, but also there are some national databases which I can access. Of course, there's Trove. That's the big, and I know you know about that one too. That's the big newspaper site. In the Northern Territory, a lot is not online, and I've actually had to go see, whenever I have time, to go down to the Northern Territory Library and start looking through their stuff. So yeah, there are other specific sites for the English and the Scottish records and the Irish records. They all have their national databases too. My scope is largely English speaking, which is why it would be great to have others aboard who can do the non-English speaking ones. And that's the thing, this is collaborative. I can only do so much, you can only do so much, but together we can do so much more.
Thanks for that. Two hands are up, Alexander and then Sonia.
Right, I don't know whether we have got some time that I may share a screen from my laptop to show you something which would make you probably smile.
Please go ahead.
I can
share it now.
Okay, share. That's the, wait a minute, where are we here? So this is the very first bit. Do you recognize biconyms? Anybody here? Especially this gentleman.
Yes, thanks. So we can see the screen so that.
Well, that is Dr. Albert Mühlstegel, hand of the course. And what I've done is the similar thing as you did. Well, let's go for it. Oh, sorry, wrong button. So, for example, that's me. We can do it also in the different, but it doesn't matter. So I've done the same thing based on a situation I've done in former times, and you see my family tree goes back to 1450, but coming back to the Bahai faith, I've got here some 10,000 people in the Bahai faith of Germany only. The other thing, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a publication at the end of the day with the very first Bahais between 1905, which is from the day Edwin Fischer came to Germany till the time in June 1937 when the faith was forbidden in Germany. And the other thing is, that is the Bahai Project I run as well. It's also on my laptop, and you see all the pictures I have here on my computer on different people who are all Bahai. So that is what I do. And when it comes, for example, back to the, I mean, if you're familiar with the how's it called, Family Search, then you've got this here as well. there's all the text there, and you can also add, if you want, of course, pictures into it, which I haven't done yet. It's not linked here. I've done it for my own family in former times, but when I changed the computer, that was gone. Right, now I have to get back to the screen. Don't know how to do that. Let's see. Yes, so.
Thanks, Alexander. And I might just mention that he will be giving a presentation in May on his digitization project. So we can look forward to that. Very exciting. Yeah. Thank you. Sonia.
Thank you for your presentation, Vicki. I have two questions. I'll ask the easy one first. I just had a look at Wikitree, and I was actually trying to find the Bahai Project, and I see that the whole thing is built primarily just to find a person's name. So how do you find things that are categorized by subject? I know there's a basic question, maybe I can find it myself later, but I thought you probably in one sentence could tell us.
Well, the Bahai category, you can, I'm trying to think, because I've never actually tried to search for it through Wikitree, I'll be honest, but you can just,
I just did it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. If you just stick it in Google, if you just go to your search engine, because it's all indexed through Google, you can definitely find it that way.
Okay, so it means you'd have to type in Wikitree and then plus the Bahai Faith, and then it will come up. But you can't use Wikitree itself to search for it. Is that what you're saying?
I think if you search for any Bahai, and then there'll be a category placement, and then that will give you the whole category.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It's not there. I'm not worried. I have a second question, so I'll move on. So my second question is, I'm on the Abdul Bahai page. There are two I see, but I'm just looking at the one that's more filled in by Don Osborne. And I notice no children are noted, etc. And I'm assuming that's on purpose because some of them have been declared covenant breakers. So my question is, this is purely a genealogy system. Do you have a policy where you don't want to have covenant breakers indicated? Not, okay. And so what I'm asking is, Don Osborne has created the Abdul Bahai page. So if someone else came and added information, that would Don have to approve that? I mean, how is that operated differently to Wikipedia, that is?
So the page I think that you're talking about, he manages it. In the future, we'd like to have a dedicated Bahai Project page or sorry, account to manage all of the Bahai profiles. But I believe that that particular page was created by someone else and then abandoned, and then he found it and took it over. But any descendants would be listed there. We don't and certainly we've had a few conversations about what might happen if, you know, people want, if, you know, if people post vandalism or certain things. But yes, you know, all of his children could theoretically be put there. They just haven't yet.
Okay. So if children, his descendants add a profile with information, that will be allowed to be there. And you mentioned earlier when you were describing the project and how it was different Wikipedia, and it was to do with control. And I just want to make sure if I understood you correctly. So when someone creates a profile, they control it, is that right? Although you've just now said that the Abdul Bahai page had been abandoned. So what happens then if someone abandons a page? How does someone else pick that up again?
Profile managers have some level of control, not complete control, but a bit more control than they would on Wikipedia. If a profile is abandoned, and there are actually a lot of good reasons, because you might create many profiles, but you couldn't possibly manage them all. I believe the limit is something around 1,500 profiles. So it would make sense to let some of them go. And then they're out there, they're orphaned. They're what's called orphaned. And then if someone else comes along who wants to manage them for whatever reason, they want to add to it, or just build that tree or whatever, then they can adopt it. And it's not just anyone can, it's only people with the Wiki genealogist designation. So you would have to sign the honor code and fully join as a member.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that, Bill, and then Mujan.
Mine is not so much a question. Mine is not so much a question as an offer, and that is I have access to newspapers.com, paid access to newspapers.com, ancestry.com, and I'm about to do the British newspaper archives as well, because I'm finding a lot of interesting family stuff. And in the course of doing that, began to find more Bahai stuff. So if anybody has like somebody or a time period or somebody they want to search, you're welcome to send me an email. And I actually put in the chat to you, Vicki, my contact information, okay? And I'm happy to help as I'm able on the Wikitree, because I actually am a signed up member and have for the last 4 years have barely been able to get on to do anything. And so I'm happy to assist as I'm able on this, because this is a particularly important project, in that those of you who do extensive family genealogies know what it's like to discover completely nonsensical genealogies online that have wrong dates, completely erroneous information, and all sorts of mistaken connections because they haven't been careful. And so, I'm aware of the pitfalls that can be there. And through the British newspaper archives, I just discovered that my great-great-grandfather was arrested for breaking into his mother's home and stealing 3 pounds from her, which in today's money is about $400. And the charges were not pressed because he said he would do better. And 5 months later, he was on a boat to America. So he left Britain and came here. So he vowed to do better. I guess he did in some way.
Thanks, Bill. That's a great offer.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's an offer only to those who are online at the moment, or
No, anybody who sees the video, they're welcome to. And what I can do is they can, they may pop you something saying, "How do I get in touch with Bill?" That's fine. Give them my email. I'm okay with that. I will get to them as I'm able, of course, because I get about 100 emails a day with various things. So.
Thanks, Bill. Vicki, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, so Bill, it sounds like you and I have very similar histories in that regard. I look forward to talking to you. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for your offer.
Thank you. So it's Mujan and then Elsa.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. I've been working for the last 2.5 years on Bahai history of the United Kingdom, and this was because a Bahai who passed away, Adam Thorne, was started on a history of the Bahai community of Britain, but then he developed illness and I offered to help him, and he passed away, so it sort of left with me. And there's the idea was to get something out by 2023, which is the 100th anniversary of the NSA of the UK, but I think we're probably not going to manage that. because just after I started working on this, we had COVID, and that sort of severely limited my ability to get about and do research in various libraries and so on. So I was sort of thrust back on the internet. And I've been quite amazed really at how much you can get off the internet now. I hadn't really done any genealogy research or anything like that, because being an Iranian, there's not a lot of genealogical stuff on the internet for my personal family. But well, my wife Wendy's done quite a lot on her family on the internet, but I wasn't involved in that. But since starting this Bahai History project, I've been really quite amazed at how much information is online, and I've been able to do a huge amount of research on the early British Bahais. I've got something like 200 pages of notes just taken off the internet, off genealogy websites, ancestry.com and other ones, and I found, you know, information that, you know, previously we just didn't have. Like, for example, the third Bahai of the UK is a lady called Mary Scaramucci, and nobody knew anything about her at all. And in one book, it's written that she was an Italian lady, and another one, the sort of, that basically we had no information about her at all. And I've managed to sort of find out exactly who she was. She wasn't an Italian. She was a British lady married to Italian. And, you know, I've managed to, you know, work out her whole, you know, family history, and even work out probably, I mean, we don't know, but probably how she became a Bahai and so on. So I've been really very impressed with how much material is out there for doing Bahai research, in my case on the Bahai history of the UK, but I'm sure the same applies to at least places like Australia and Canada and New Zealand and so on. But I have a question for you, and that is that the one thing that I'm a little bit stumped on at the moment is that there have been several individuals whom there's information on these websites about this person. And well, I'll give you an example, which actually relates to Australia, which is the Jenner family, who migrated as Bahais from the UK to Australia. And some member of the family has put up some very, very interesting photographs. There's a photograph of Ethel Rosenberg, who's the second British Bahai, as a young woman. We've only got pictures of her as an old woman. And this lady obviously has access to family photographs and has put this one up, as well as of the Jenner family who migrated to Australia. But because of this business of not putting up information about living people, I just haven't been able to sort of get in contact with the living people, as it were, who I could find out, well, you know, who's got these photographs? Can we get better scans of some of them, and so on. I've got that this particular lady who's put up these photographs has got a sort of little moniker of JENN something something, but there's no email address attached to that. I've tried clicking on it and sending her a message, but she doesn't reply. And because there's no extension of the Jenner family into living people on this website, I can't sort of try and find out, you know, where the living members of the family are at the moment, to see if I can sort of find their email address and so on. So how do you talked about getting into contact with living members of the family? How do you get hold of living members of the family if you don't have their names on the websites?
That's really hard. Usually the people who put up the information who are not part of our project, usually they're family members, but not always. And sometimes it's just a lot of case of detective work and emailing so-and-so and saying, well, you know, where does this come from? And then maybe they'll reply, maybe not. Sometimes it's going through the internet to see if that name comes up anywhere else, try to find some contact information for them. Yeah, I do. I've run into that myself, and that is really hard. I do say that on Wikitree, everyone has to use their name or anonymous if they don't want to, but they can't just use like a pseudonym. So, and they do have to have an email. They do have to be contactable in some way. And then there's all sorts of procedure to go through if you can't contact them and whatever. But that's, yeah, that we do have to get a little bit creative. But yeah, I might be able to help actually if you like. I'm definitely, we'll see what I can do and see.
Yeah, unfortunately on Wikitree itself, this family don't seem to appear. They're on ancestry.com and someone is putting up pictures and so on, but that person doesn't seem to be contactable. They don't appear. I've looked in Wikitree and the family just don't seem to have got an entry into Wikitree. So that's where I've got to so far, but I would really like to get good scans of these pictures because they're valuable pictures for British Bahai history and for Australian Bahai history, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can, if there's any way I can help, please let me know. I might be able to look through and see. Who knows? Maybe together we can certainly try.
Could I just jump in here to mention that one of the ways I found my fourth cousins in Britain, who I had hoped had family information from my great-great-grandmother, which they did not, was I followed wills through the British will system and came up with names that I then searched on the internet and found addresses. And then I wrote them a letter. And so it may be possible if you have some idea where these folks are to and who inherited, down through a series of wills. I mean, you're going to have to pay a little money probably. You could get to who was the last person that is likely, in inheritance, who's likely to be alive, and then see if you can find an address. It's possible to do.
Thanks, Bill.
I know American wills are online, but are Australian wills online?
That's a good question. And British ones are, because I went for British ones.
Yeah. British
but
ones
Australia,
are.
I don't know. That we have to do a little
I know
research.
we have a saying in Australia that where there's a will, there's a relative. But yeah, I think there's this thing called probate that goes online, but I don't know if wills necessarily go online. But Vicki will look into it. Shall we move on to Elsa?
It's interesting, the questions that have been raised, that Mojan raised, kind of relate to my question. This is really new to me, and I really appreciate this overview that Vicki, that you've given. And I mean, as an archivist, I'm sort of somewhat aware of genealogy because people sometimes come, but in my job, I don't have a lot of genealogists at this point. We have, but one of my interests is really ensuring that there's good sort of resources for people to, how do I start to do research? How do I know where to go to find this, that, or the other thing? And I was wondering if there was some kind of a Bahai genealogy for dummies type resource, and that was kind of like for people who are new to it, how to get started. And even like some of the things that Bill mentioned, that Mojan mentioned, like how to get people, how to help people go this way and that way. I was also wondering about the relationship of, say, Wikitree to, like you mentioned, family search, which I didn't know about. Although I keep saying I want to do family history, I'm too busy with working with source documents to actually in my job to get too much into my own family history. But the relationship between Ancestry, 23andMe, like all of these different DNA kind of sites, because it seems that there's some family tree functionality associated with the DNA testing. So I'm curious about that relationship. But also as you were talking, I went in and I just like searched my grandmother's on both sides to see. And I was quite shocked to see how much information of my family was there and how some of it was incorrect. And I didn't know, like an uncle, the only uncle surviving of my father is listed as deceased, but he's alive. And so like that, so I was curious about the living thing. So I saw there's a profile manager. I have no idea who she is. She seems to have tapped into lots of things. So she's probably not related to me, but probably tapping into some other information somewhere. So I'm kind of curious about that. And then, so I thought about, I could send her a note, say, hey, my uncle's alive. You know, this information's wrong, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But it feels a little weird having somebody who I don't know, and I don't think I'm related to, actually being in control of my family's history. Do you know what I mean? And so I think, so as an archivist also, I'm really, really aware of like privacy kinds of things. And so I appreciate like how you've kind of explained some of the standards of the site, because I think some people would be a little weirded out to see family history like that. Anyway, that's just kind of a comment. It's not really a question, but in terms of something that I think would be of use to people is like a starting point with Bahai genealogy, and it connects to like people are also interested in their own family as well, but yeah, and then the relationship between these different sites. If you had any comments about that, would be helpful.
Yeah, introduction to Bahai genealogy, well, that's still, I guess that's still developing, but there's definitely Wikitree for Dummies and Genealogy for Dummies. And personally, I would recommend that people start with their own families first if they can, and work on that first and then branch out. And there are, as far as Wikitree goes, because everyone is the assumption is that it's all a single family tree and we're all related in some way. And in fact, there are relationship finders and connection finders, which you can use well, I should say members can use to determine, well, who's related to who and so forth. So there's all sorts of rules around collaboration, and it's supposed to be collaborative. It's not supposed to be one person controls the entire line. Although I used to do a lot of mentoring on Wikitree, and we come across that a lot because it's not like most websites where you have your own tree and your own research and you control that. But you sort of have to let go of a lot of control when you're on Wikitree. But and that can be difficult for folks who are very used to doing it the other way. And I agree, it can be very jarring if you know, you come up and you see someone else that you have no idea who they are doing all of this. And personally, I don't want people to think that I'm, you know, sort of taking over their family or putting things up. That I want to be open about the fact that this is sort of shared history, and it can be changed, and it's not set in stone, and I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I don't mean to be, but please let me know, that sort of thing. So, and that's the sort of attitude I think that they have on Wikitree, but it's not really usual for the genealogy world, I guess you could say. And one of the reasons why I didn't feel comfortable in many genealogy spaces. So, but I would be happy to send you some of the getting started stuff, not just for Wikitree, but for genealogy in general, if you want to go that way.
Okay, thank you for that useful exchange. Alexander, please.
Right. Well, I'm fully with you, but I've got a strong feeling that there's a cultural change between the Anglo-Saxon way of doing genealogy and the continental European side, because you're talking about family tree, which is right, or Wikitree or ancestry or whatever there is. By the way, family tree and ancestry have both a major default, that is, when the scans have been done by the Mormons, luckily, the transcribing is a mess. Because, for example, the special S we have in Germany, which looks like some sort of a B, is mostly written wrong, or we have got a U and a U with two dots on top. We say U or Ü. It's also misspelled very often, so you have to be very, very careful in really taking it as an information. It's a very good start at the end of the day. But the main thing is, when we are talking about genealogy in Germany, especially, we're talking church books. We're talking church books from today till back to 1650. And then we're talking about taxes, tax systems, and looking about who is owning the property or land, or who is, has to pay money for cultivating the land or whatever. It really depends. Unless you're in the royal side, then it's much easier because all these books are already printed and you can just copy and paste them. Coming to research, the answer how I started was when two uncles of mine, meaning about 5 generations upwards, 3 generations downwards, contacted me and said, we are related. Do you mind sending us your information about your family, because we are not very well aware of that. And they sent me in exchange a Word file about 250 pages, nothing else but all this family tree back to 16 odd, you know, 1650 or 1680 it was, I think. And here it's something which is very, very strange, which came up. That was, first of all, there were two ends, Johannes Meinhardt on the one end and Johannes Meinhardt on the other end, married to an Anna, whoever that was, and Anna it was, and they said, well, may it be that these two persons or two couples are the same? And they said, no, no, no. I said, well, it's the same numbers of generations backwards. It's the same area they're living in. It's the same time they're living it. And turned out they are the same person. So what I can show you, or what you can do if you come back to, let's say, beyond or even earlier than 17-ish, you see the explosion of mankind. So you have normally two parents. They have two parents and two parents, but this doesn't hold true when you go back to 1600, because you had only 16 million population in Germany and not 80 as today. So the equation is something wrong at the end of the day. On the Bahai faith, I found out the situation is completely different. There's nothing in Germany online, or let's say hardly anything online, because of the stringent Data Protection Act we have here. But there's an awful lot of material in the Bahai News, and that is why these Bahai News, for example, are not part of David Hazlitt's page, because unless we black them out or we cover them by whatever it is, I wouldn't do it, because you can easily do a search within seconds, or let's say depending on the machine. I do a search from all Bahai News within 7 minutes. You've got a complete CV of everybody. So born, married, member of which committees or NSA, whatsoever. And the whole tricky downside is it's not only Bahai News, but also the other magazines and the other books. And when it comes to the very early Baha'is in Germany, I've done a meeting with 3 ladies, and all they counted together were the age of 250 years, to identify the people from 905 to 937. And we all came to the conclusion we can do only 50%. The rest is completely unknown. So we have no idea who these people were on the pictures or photos or even the movies they have, for example, from 1936. This generation has passed away, and this information is lost. At the end of the day, the worst situation was, for example, local spirit assembly of Rostock. We have got the picture of 9, we have got the names below down, but the wrong sequence. So we definitely do not know who is who at the end of the day. So it's, and we will not find out. And the last bit I want to mention is the what you know as tablets of Baha'u'llah to America. I've done the same with this for Germany, and that was just published this year. And that was a extremely big piece of information who actually had been Baha'i at that time, between 1905 and 1921. Again, the downside is I asked the Bahai World Center to kindly send me copies of the letters to Abdul Baha, and they refused because they said it's privacy. But if somebody would get access to these letters, not necessarily to be published, but just to read them, there would be so much more information about the situation in Germany you won't get anywhere else.
Thank you, Alexander. We might just check if there's any last questions or give the last word to Vicki before we finish the session. So Vicki, it's over to you. If you've got anything else you want to conclude with for us today.
I'm just wanted to extend my sincere thanks to everyone, both who I've mentioned and who hasn't, and who I haven't, who I've forgotten somehow, or who's here and who isn't. Thanks so much for all that you do, because all of our work builds and builds, and together we can do such amazing things, I think. And also getting this all online and sorted while we're still here, and we still remember and so forth. It's just amazing. So thanks very much for everyone's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. So this has been a very productive session. Everybody's learned something new about the skills involved in genealogy and also its linkage to the disciplines of history and biography, and the need for a global perspective on how we do this. And the more that we can comprehend how genealogy is handled in different parts of the world, what opportunities exist for us to link, is all part of this process. And there were many hints in this consultation about ways in which we can have further sessions with you and other of your colleagues in this discipline. So once again, thanks very much. And we look forward to welcoming everybody for the 4th in the series, which will take place in May. Thank you for now. Bye-bye.